Good afternoon. So thanks for coming. For those who might not be card-carrying members of the MIT Sloan community, my name is Dave Schmidtlein. I'm Dean of the MIT Sloan School of Management. It's a real privilege today to be able to welcome Brian Halligan. You know Brian's history. Brian is the co-founder and CEO of HubSpot. Brian is also a 2005 Sloan Fellows graduate of MIT's Sloan School. We've got an interesting format, as you can tell, for this afternoon's Dean's Innovative Leader series. We are delighted, in addition to Brian, to have Andy McAfee with us. Andy, as many of you know, is the co-director of the Initiative on the Digital Economy for MIT's Sloan School. And now, Andy and Brian, you two have never met each other, right? Okay, maybe they know each other a little bit. And so Andy is going to be the, if you will, discussion facilitator, facilitator this afternoon, helping the shy Brian open up a little bit before us. I think you know the HubSpot story. It's not for me to tell it to you, but certainly among the great points of pride is the way that Brian and his co-founder, Dharmesh Shah, who's a 2006 graduate of MIT Sloan, changed the nature of marketing, not just of inbound marketing, and created new platforms for the way that organizations connect with each other. As Brian has said it himself, the world of marketing was broken, and he and his co-founder took it upon themselves to fix it. That fix has over 13,000 client participants at this point. That's probably wildly out of date, in 93 countries. And so we're proud of Brian. Brian also, as you may know, is dedicating some of his time to teach here at MIT Sloan School in his spare time, because being a CEO and director of a major growing company that just went public is something that indeed you can well do in your spare time and dedicate yourself to MIT Sloan School. As I hope you can tell, we're very proud of Brian, and it's a delight to welcome him, and of course, to thank Andy McAfee as well. So please give a warm welcome, Andy McAfee and Brian Halligan.
Dean Schmidtlein, thanks very much for that, and thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I'm going to pester Brian with questions that I've wanted to ask him for about 9 years now. For the first chunk of time here, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the floor. So please be thinking about the kinds of things you'd like to ask Brian. We'll have a good chunk of time at the end for that. But I want to tell one quick story. I met Brian when, sometime in 2006, I published an article in Sloan Management in MIT Sloan Management Review magazine, and I got this weird email from a guy saying, "Hey, that was cool. Can I come talk to you about it?" And I kind of said, all right. And he showed up in my office, and we started to hit it off at that point. And he asked me a bunch of questions about the article, and then questions more broadly. And at the time, you were running a tiny little company called HubSpot, a baby little startup called HubSpot, and you had these big ambitions for the place. And we started to become friends there and then. And in the year since, I've basically watched you realize all those ambitions and then some, maybe not to an extent that surprises you, but certainly beyond any reasonable expectations of what you could have done and where you could have taken that company. So it's just been amazing to watch you take that organization on this amazing journey. We were all thrilled for you when you went public. You got 900 employees. You're on a rocket ship right now. And our goal for today is to understand a little bit about how you've accomplished that. The name of this seminar series is the Innovative Leadership Series. So to start off, how do you define your leadership style, and can you help us understand how you formed it, where it came from?
Okay, interesting. So Andy and I had dinner last night, and he said, so there was a list of questions that were sent out, and it's like, here's all the questions, and they were approved by my PR person, and I'm all set for it.
Like I care,
And Andy
right?
is like, what? This is going to be like a Charlie Rose interview. And so here we go. I would say I have 3 influences on my sort of management style. and I sort of think of them as thought bubbles above my head. One of them is the company I work for right out of college. I work for a software company called Parametric Technology, PTC. I joined when it was an early stage startup. I spent 10 years there. I joined when there were 200 people left when there were 5,000. And I spent 7 years in Asia. It was terrific run for me. And if I were to describe sort of the political leaning of this company, PTC, it's very right-wing. Hardcore, command and control, right-wing institution, very tightly managed. Interesting company, learned a lot. Learned a lot about how to hire, how to sell, how to build teams. And then my next company was a startup called Groove Networks, started by a wonderful guy named Ray Ozzie. And Ray Ozzie is well known for being the guy who, he started Lotus Notes, or he built Lotus Notes, which was a hot startup in the, I guess, early 80s, right down the road.
None of you were alive yet, but trust us, this was a big deal.
It was a big deal back then. He's kind of invented email. And I joined early again as his VP of sales. And so I came up through the sales ranks. And this is as far left as PTC was right. He was a very kind, gentle man. If PTC was all about selling, he was all about innovation. And so I learned a lot from him about, he sort of looked at where humans were going. He described himself as a social anthropologist. So how are humans changing over the next 5 or 10 years? How's technology changing over the next 5, 10 years? What can I do to bring those things together? And so he thought very much around corners. He thought very far in the future. PTC thought quarter to quarter to quarter. So it's very different. And they're both very influential on me. So I have this left wing, right wing kind of thing going on. Very much innovation, very much command and control. And then the third one is, frankly, Sloan. The best decision I made in my life was was not starting HubSpot, was going to Sloan.
Tell us why.
Okay. I met you through the experience, Andy, that's why.
Now give us an actual reason.
Well, I was just telling Dean Schmidtline, I got 3 things out of Sloan.
You seem to think in threes. I hadn't known this about you before.
It's tricolons. You guys know about tricolons? You will. Tricolons is a very useful thing. 3s are useful. Talking 3s everything. Like when you listen to a great speech.
3 being the number.
Abraham Lincoln, Obama, Kennedy, Steve Jobs. It's all about 3s. 3s stick in people's heads.
3.
Tricolons.
If you take nothing else away
Google
from
it.
this
Tricolons.
leadership series.
I got some pedigree. So I went to undergrad at the University of Vermont. Does anyone know what I majored in?
We got to guess.
Keg stands. Majored in keg stands. I was fantastic at keg stands. And so I frankly wanted some pedigree on my resume. And Sloan was perfect for me because I was in the tech world. And so the first thing I got was some pedigree. And it's actually useful when you went to the University of Vermont and majored in keg stands. The second thing I got was I learned a tremendous amount. I didn't realize how much I didn't know when I went to Sloan. And I'll just give you a couple highlights on some of the stuff that I learn and use every day. I didn't know anything about, yeah, come on over. Sweet. There's no booze in there, I promise. I didn't know anything about accounting or finance, and there's other ways to learn it, but it's a very nice place to learn. I took S.P. Kothari's accounting class. Fantastic. It's like this is the language of business. I learned an awful lot. Stats was a mind bender for me, and regression analysis and all that stuff. It's like, wow, this is powerful stuff. Use it every day in my job today. I had a strategy class that was really impactful. Some of that first year basic stuff I didn't know and was amazingly useful. Some of the leadership stuff we did was really useful and very introspective in learning about yourself and getting a lot of 360-degree feedback from the people you worked with. I took Antoinette Shore's entrepreneurial finance class, mind bender class for me. It was a really good class, very, very useful. All the system dynamics stuff. All these things we learned at Sloan, like all over the whiteboards at HubSpot, are system dynamics models, are the waterfalls that Antoinette Shore does around entrepreneurial finance, are Clay Christensen's models, all stuff we took out of Sloan. So I learned a lot. That's the second thing.
It sounds like you got more out of the hard side of an MBA, of a business education, than the soft side. Is that accurate?
Probably true. Probably true.
Is that because you'd built up the soft skills in your career?
Probably true.
Fine.
Probably true. So that's the first thing is pedigree. Second thing was I didn't know what I didn't know. I learned a lot from these type of things. Like, for example, I was in a meeting yesterday, and we were talking about adding a new executive into HubSpot. And we like this person very much, and we're going to put them in. And we're going to put this new executive on a new project. And I remembered hearing Alex Darbeloff, who's passed away since then. He was the CEO of a big Fortune 500 company. And he did one of these. And what he said that what he would like to do was whenever he had a new executive, he'd take the new executive from the outside and put him on an older project and take a star internally and put them on the new project. And so we literally quoted one of these. This is 8 years after Sloan yesterday. So just learned a lot. The third thing I got, everyone still with me? Okay. Turning on here. The third thing I got was the network. And everyone says, oh, the network's great at MIT. And I was like, yeah, it's great. I'm sure my network's already good. Let me tell you a little snippet of how we got Sloan started and how the network was involved and how important the network was. Sloan was literally born of, HubSpot was literally born of MIT. Go to MIT, you go to Sloan, and you want to start a company.
Did you know that on the way in?
I did not. I never thought I'd start a company. Let's get to that in a second. Hold that one. Cool. Charlie. Where was I? Network. Okay. So you get here.
If you're going to interrupt your interviewer, at least pick up your own thread and keep going. Like, that seems like a minimum requirement, you know? Network.
I told you, keg stands. So I met my co-founder at Sloan, and Sloan has a lot of smart people in it, and it's like you're separating the wheat from the chaff. There's a certain amount of people who are into tech, a certain amount of people at the time Web 2.0 was the thing, and that was my thing. And I met like the perfect co-founder. This guy, Dharmesh Shah, is a wonderful man. You should follow him on Twitter, follow his blog on startups.com. He's wonderful, and he's very different than me. He's extremely introverted. He's very technical, and I'm obviously a little more extroverted and more of a sales and marketing guy. So it's real 1 + 1 = 3 that happened. So that was the first network thing that happened. The second network thing that happened was we're cranking along, and we needed some angel money. And so the first person we called to raise angel money was a guy named, do people know Ed Roberts? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was just telling the dean this story. It's a fascinating meeting. So you do a pitch for angel money. It's an hour-long pitch, right? And usually the person raising the money does all the talking, right? It's like you're pitching them and you're telling the story, you're trying to get them excited about it. And this is the most unusual angel pitch I've ever had, because he did 99% of the talking. I did 1% of the talking, and somehow it worked. And so Ed put some money in.
So you were smart enough just to shut up and wait for the check at the end of this.
We didn't have a chance.
Brilliant move.
So this is Ed. And then I'll give you another funny thing that happened was we wanted to raise $1 million of angel, and we filled in the round with a couple of Ed's friends, but it was mostly our classmates who put the money in. And it turns out your classmates are walking around, and it doesn't look like they've got a pot to piss in. They got ripped jeans, and their backpacks all dirty. But their parents are filthy rich. And so we raised almost our whole round, and we made these people I won't say who, but so-and-so put in $100,000. They made $3-4 million in the IPO. Like, did ridiculously well. So the lesson there is, when you're in an individual class, and there's certain people in the class who are kind of cool, and some are really smart, and some are a little douchey. Don't be that douchey one. It's going to be really hard to raise money if you're that. Be the good guy. Be the smart one. So that's the second way that the network helped. And then we're going out, and we needed to... and then we needed to go out and get some customers and employees. And I would say our first 10 customers were classmates who were willing to put up with, really poor quality software, but were supportive of us, which was great. And I'd say 10 out of our first 15 employees were Sloanies. We really started the company as Sloanies. Sloanies still really run HubSpot. So those are that's sort of the network piece. So the three things I got out of it were little pedigree, learned an awful lot, and gosh, the network is much more powerful than I ever imagined.
Okay, now tell us about becoming an entrepreneur.
Okay. Never thought I would start a company.
What did you think was going to happen post Sloan?
Yeah. And so I was sort of a career I became sort of a career switcher was here. So when I was here before I started HubSpot, I took the New Enterprises class. In the New Enterprises class, they would bring ideas at the time in from other parts of the campus. And one of Ed Langer's, is he still a rock star here? Bob Langer, sorry. Is he still the kind of the guy here? He was the man back then. I don't know if he's still the man. But one of his students had an idea, and the students pitched our New Enterprises class, and I was like, that sounds cool. And I was at the time, I couldn't have been more wrong about this. I was like, this is 2006. The software industry is dead. It's going to get commoditized. It's going to move to India. I'm going to switch to biotech. Biotech's the future. And so I did.
Well, you were half right.
Biotech is the future. Software certainly isn't dead. Yes, that's true.
You see how he keeps up with these insights? It's amazing.
And so I worked in New Enterprises. I started a company called Neuroplas. I work with one of Langer's guys, and I work with Mriganka Sur, who's the head of the neuroscience department. And they had a drug that you would inject into the brain of someone who had a stroke, and it would increase the plasticity of the neurons in your brain. Fascinating project. And I worked it pretty hard. I spent a ton of time on it at Sloan. And two reasons I didn't end up doing it. One is we did some trials on rats that didn't work great, which was the first issue. But the second issue is, even if those trials work, I discovered myself that there's so much domain expertise in a biotech that I was relatively clueless in a lot of the meetings, and just the learning curve to come up on all the science. And if you're building a biotech startup, it's all science for a little bit of fundraising, an awful lot of science for the first 10 years, and then you have to start selling and marketing. So it was a mismatch, so I ended up going back into software. But what I always thought I would do, Andy, was I would help somebody else start a company. And so there was a guy when I was growing up, his name's Richard Harrison. He was a neighbor of ours. He was about 10 years older than me. And he went to work for PTC, this company I referred to earlier. And he was their VP of sales. And he was an early employee and grew it to be, PTC is a $4 billion market cap company, big company now. And I worked for him, and I kind of mentored under him. And I always thought I would do that. I would be the VP of sales, help somebody else do it. Never thought I would start a company.
You'd be the VP of sales at a young, fast-growing company.
Yes.
Fine.
And back then, what happened was, that's what I always thought I would do. What happened, and I still thought that at Sloan after I went through the biotech. But I met the perfect co-founder, and we had a good idea, and it was in a good space. And frankly, Dharmesh talked me into it. And it works. I mean, it's the second best decision I made in my life was certainly starting HubSpot. It's been just great. I've had so much fun. It's been really great. But I never thought I would start a company. Dharmesh is a serial entrepreneur.
Yep.
I never saw myself as I never saw myself starting a company.
So then do you believe that entrepreneurs are made, not born, or both made and born?
I don't know.
It's a really honest answer, isn't it? You rarely get that.
I really don't know.
Okay, but your experience argues that did you have lemonade stands when you were 8 years old? Were you always?
I did.
You did?
I had a paper route when I was like 4.
That's, I think, illegal.
I had a painting company in college. I was that kid. And I saw a study once that said that your success is highly correlated with when was the first time you had a job.
Yeah.
I saw something, but you probably saw the same study. I was one of those guys who was very early. I'm a worker. I like to work. My father was a worker. I looked up to him, and I sort of followed his model.
All right. When you look at the ride that HubSpot has had, it seems like this uninterrupted, happy, rocket ship to the moon. My guess is it wasn't that you've had some tough times. You've had some near-death experiences. What was your darkest hour in the history of the company, and how did you get through it?
Okay. I had a feeling you were going to ask that. I draw
mainly because we talked about it last night.
I have this curve in my head of it hasn't been directly up and to the right in terms of like how the company has done, and
it sure as heck looks that way.
I know. It's the way I would describe it, it's a sine wave laid on top of that, and there's been ups and downs inside of that sine wave. Yep. And boy, there's been some downs.
Were the downs primarily really early, or have you had downs even as you've progressed?
Yeah, we had a down in Q1 of 13 where we missed our numbers, and that was a dark, dark day. We had a down in Q3 of 11, missed our numbers, dark, dark day. We had some tough times when the economy was bad, or churn rates went way up. So it hasn't been completely smooth. The last couple of years have been pretty smooth.
What have you learned about how to get through those tough times?
It's leadership, actually. So when I was at Sloan, I've always been the guy who's up on front of the stage with the gray hair saying gray hair is overrated. And I thought that. And the primary reason I thought that is we hired a ton of kids from Sloan who were much younger than I did, no gray hair, and they taught us so much and they did so well. But it turns out as the company gets bigger, boy, swapping out the leader is incredibly powerful. So I tell you one thing we do in HubSpot that's been very impactful. We do a net promoter survey of our employees. We do it once a quarter, and we ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer one of your friends to work at HubSpot, and then why? And we measure it by department. And so we know there's trouble in paradise when one of the department scores starts really going down.
Yep.
And so we'll have a sit down with the person leading that department, and we'll ask that person. We call it a chili pepper analysis, because we did a lot of the early days of HubSpot. We did a lot of our business at Similon's, the Thai restaurant over here. And when you look at the Similon's menu, if it's got 3 chilies on it, it's a real hot issue. And so we want the chili pepper analysis, and here, give us the hot issues, and what are you gonna do to fix them? And we give them a quarter to 2 to work on it. But the employees tell you what's going on, and if they don't turn the corner pretty quickly, it goes down fast.
And then will you swap out the head of that?
You swap out and we've done this multiple times, and we've had to do this multiple times over the last few years. And my God, I've been blown away by how well it works when you swap them out for the right person. Like that Net Promoter Score will jump.
It can jump right back up.
Right back up within a quarter. And just productivity of the group, just leadership matters a hell of a lot more than I thought. And it doesn't have to be gray hair per se, but a little bit of experience as the company's gotten bigger has been awfully helpful. Awfully helpful.
And have you been able to both grow leaders from within and bring them in from outside?
Yeah.
What's your proportion, or how do you think about that?
Okay. It's been an interesting voyage. So in the early days of HubSpot, we hired all Sloanies, ran the whole company. And then over time, as things broke, things are always breaking as you're growing. Everything breaks.
How do you learn not to freak out when stuff breaks?
You do freak out. Yeah, I do freak out.
Because I know you well enough to know that, like, you're a somewhat tightly wound guy. You got a huge amount of everything about you tied up in this company.
My whole brand and my whole net worth, my whole everything is in this. I do freak out.
Have you just learned to manage your own freakouts? And
I freaked out more earlier. I've become a better manager. So I used to freak out on my employees. I would get really mad at them sometimes. And once in a while I would yell at them. And we do 360-degree reviews of everyone, including me. And the feedback would come back. It's like, you gotta keep your cool. We're gonna have problems. Like, relax.
Keep it together.
And so I've learned about myself over time quite a bit. And so that's part of it, just getting the feedback of how ineffective that is.
Fine.
The second part of it is I just get used to problems. So I get used to the fact that at any given time, something's broken inside of HubSpot. And I call them potholes. So at HubSpot, they call me the Chief Pothole Prevention Officer. You want to find that pothole when it's small so it doesn't turn into one of these things out on Main Street that swallows your whole darn car. So I'm the Chief Pothole Prevention Officer. I'm always looking for potholes in the road. And we've gotten quite good at that. So we find problems early. And one of the things we've gotten very good at is facing problems head on and not pussyfooting around them and really hitting them hard. And we've gotten better at that over time.
Is your main early problem detection system the Net Promoter scores you do of your employees, or are there other tools?
There's other tools. So HubSpot's a volume type business. It's not an enterprise sale. We've got 14,000 customers. And so there's a tremendous amount of, every company now is a big data company. It's just so much data about everything. What apps our customers are using, are they happy, are they unhappy, how many times they call support, just like any number you can imagine. So once a day, I get a series of reports. And so literally daily, I can see if there's an issue.
Yep.
And then once a month, I get a really nice PowerPoint deck. It's like 100 pages, and I can look at everything. Every time we've had a problem, we make a chart about it to say, okay, this is going to be. And you can see the problems. And then we surface the problems in our monthly management meetings, and we dig into them. And so we've instrumented as much as we know we can instrument, and that shows early problems, and we jump on them pretty quick. And that that muscle group took time to develop, frankly.
That wasn't the company's DNA at birth.
We were always data-driven, but we're looking at the wrong data, or we're probably still looking at the wrong data. You interview me in 2 years, a bunch of stuff we're missing now. But we've got much better early warning systems, and we also have, there's no rose-colored glasses inside the company. No one's looking around and seeing rosy. Everyone's got we look for problems and we deal with problems.
Yep. I want to go back to the notion that you have of hiring a ton of Sloanies, because that takes us in two directions. One is hiring MBAs in general, and a lot of the guys that I talk with out in Silicon Valley, for example, are really negative, really disparaging about the value of an MBA, about hiring those kinds of people. So let me ask you to comment on that. Why do you see value in this, overinflated entitlement conferring degree?
Well, apparently we've got your opinion on it. I just personally got a lot of value out of it, the three things I talked about. And so I like it. I also look at the people we hired. We hired a bunch of folks that were classic MBAs. They worked at Bain, or they worked at McKinsey, or they worked at some consulting company. They went to Sloan and they wanted to career switch, which is the canonical reason you get your MBA. And we hired a bunch of them. They're way smarter than I am. And they're athletic. They can figure stuff out very quickly and move into different parts of the organization, and they're fantastic. I'm still learning from them every day, and I've just been incredibly impressed. By the way, we've hired a lot of people from Sloan and a lot of people from HBS. It's amazing the culture difference between the schools and the employees. And this isn't a slam on HBS, but it's a very different culture. Sloanies are more technical, they're more geeked out, they're more into the numbers in analytics. They're ambitious in a way that's measured, like they want the next step, but they really want the next project and the next learning. We've turned over almost everyone we've hired from HBS. It's just a different feel. They're very ambitious. They want to run HubSpot. Like 3 months after joining HubSpot, we've had trouble. There's something about the...
And you politely point out someone's already got that job?
Yes. And there's something about the culture of HubSpot and the culture of Sloan that are woven. I think HubSpot is basically Sloan's culture because we were so much born out of there. But gosh, if we could hire 20 Sloanies a year, we would do it. The Sloanies are awesome. You guys rock. Love you guys.
That's shameless pandering. Wow. You have about 900 employees now. What % are millennials?
95.
There was just a report that came out, I think by the OECD, that says that America's millennials are just woefully unskilled, ill-prepared, just this dead weight on the workforce, essentially. You seem to have a different impression. Are you just really good at picking out the cream of that crop, or what have you learned about how to work with this generation?
Fascinating question.
I was proud of it, thank you.
Yeah. I love millennials. I think the millennials are a misunderstood cohort. And I think what's going on, so I'm a Gen Xer, right? I'm 47. And what happens in companies is Gen Xers grew up with a certain way to manage and lead, and it's pretty command and control. Yep. And they're trying to get the millennials to work in our model. And the millennials are just like, there's no way I'm doing that. That just doesn't make sense. I grew up in a very different way. My relationship with my parents is different. The internet's changed. You just don't get it. And so at HubSpot, I sort of agree with the millennials on that. So at HubSpot, we've taken a different tact, and we sort of said, let's build a culture that attracts millennials and retains millennials. So most people have a problem with millennials because they hire them and 9 months later they're gone. What we try to do is build a culture that's a magnet for millennials and is a really good system for millennials to stay. So we've actually made ourselves work like millennials, and I think millennials have it right. And so I think...
What are the key things? What are the 3 things?
I don't know if I have the tricolon ready on that one.
That's millennial friendly or millennial centric about HubSpot.
Millennials are motivated by mission much more than money. My generation is
so you underpay. That's freaking great.
Put it this way, if your mission is, I want to drop 2 cents to the bottom line this year by either gouging my customers or gouging the atmosphere or the earth in some way, that's just not motivating to millennials. It didn't matter. I don't think it mattered in our generation. I think people were very motivated by money. I don't think millennials are. And I think our mission is pretty compelling. We're trying to transform the way the world sells and markets to match the way humans shop and buy. I think it's kind of a noble cause. It's one of the reasons we're successful. Millennials are very much about learning.
Okay.
They want to learn. They always want to be on a new project. They always want to learn new stuff. And so we set our company up to be, boy, it's like big tuition reimbursement stuff. We have speakers like this come into HubSpot all the time. We make sure people are rotating between departments at a certain rate, or we've got serious problems, like all kinds of ways to learn.
Okay.
A third one is, I think millennials, this is going to sound a little weird, but I feel like with millennials, if you trust them, they'll reward that trust, and they'll trust you, and they'll behave right. And so millennials want transparency, radical transparency. And if they know what you're thinking and know what you're doing, they're going to trust you. I think millennials grew up in an era when people just don't trust institutions in general. I mean, it was bad in the Nixon era. It's much worse today. Institutions are not trusted, no matter what that institution is. And institutions are generally not trusted because they're not transparent. And whenever you're hiding something, there's trouble. And so there's nothing hidden at HubSpot. Everything's public. Everything's out there for people to see. And there's a great deal of trust we give to the employees. There's no employee handbook. We have one 3-letter phrase for our handbook, and it's use good judgment. And I'll tell you where that came from. It's a project I was working on very early days at HubSpot with this developer. His name's Patrick, terrific kid. And Patrick and I banged back and forth over email all weekend on the project. I was testing his software. He was building the software. And he put in 20 hours over the weekend for sure. Then I saw him on Tuesday, and back then we had time off, and he handed me his form, and I'm signing his form because he wanted to take the following Friday off to go to Philadelphia to visit his girlfriend, actually. And I knew his girlfriend, the whole thing, and I'm signing the form. And I just thought to myself, this is funny. I'm signing his form to give him next Friday off. Shouldn't he have given me a credit form for the 20 hours he did over the weekend? It's kind of silly. Don't you think it's silly? Silly. And so he's just, screw it. No more vacation time off form, no vacation tracking, no vacation. There's no vacation policy.
And you're still
do it
in that mode.
Yes. And that works great. We give the employees a tremendous amount of freedom and autonomy, and they reward us. People aren't off in Nairobi doing crazy stuff for months and months at a time, and they coordinate their vacations well, but they don't necessarily want the oversight. They want you to trust them. And that cuts across pretty much everything at HubSpot is this one phrase of use good judgment. And it's scaled. It may break at some point, but it's scaled really nicely up to 900 employees, and I feel like the millennials really, really like that.
All right, I've got one more question for you, and
Yep.
then we're going to throw it open for the audience. So please think about what you want to ask Brian. If I have heard this story correctly, you lobbied your board to pay you less.
Yes, I was successful with that lobby.
Congratulations.
Okay, a couple thoughts on that. The way exec comp works is fascinating. And there's a debate, obviously, nationwide about CEO comp. It's on the cover of the journal all the time. And here's the way it works. And so I'm on HubSpot's board. I'm on another public company's board. And there's a compensation committee. There's 3 or 4 people on that compensation committee. And their job is to figure out how much to pay the execs and the comp policies and whatnot. And the way it works is there's a third-party company. It's the same company, by the way, for lots of businesses. And what the third-party company does is they pick who are the 20 other companies that are similar to you in size and business model and market cap. And then they benchmark how much the CEOs and all the executives make in those firms. Everybody with me? Okay. And so let's say there's 20, and for us it would be a firm like Constant Contact or LogMeIn or NetSuite, companies like this that you might have heard of. And everyone gets benchmarked on what their base is and what their bonus is and what their stock is. And then they plot it out, and then they plot you, let's just talk about me, not my execs, and they plot you on that curve, where are you on the base and whatever. And then every company, my guess is no company says, well, we got it. We're gonna pay the 25th percentile, right? Because you lose it. So what happens is everyone's at the 75th. I'm guessing we're gonna pay at the 75th. And so if you just do the math on that, year after year after year after year, everyone's getting trued up to the 75th percent, and it runs away. And it's run away in every industry, basically. And that same math goes on at every industry. And so I'm not surprised there's an outrage in the country about it. I think that's the reason why it happens. That's also why bubbles happen in stock markets. and because they value off each other, not off DCF and things like that. But I say, well, I'm going to make an example. I'm not going to get paid the 75th percentile, and I'm using what I call the Drucker rule. So Peter Drucker spoke on this a few years back, and what he said is, I don't think the CEO should make more than 25 times what the average employee makes. It's like, that seems reasonable. That's a lot more than the average employee makes. Arguably not even worth that. And so we capped it at the 25x. Now, the downside of that is I'm woefully underpaid relative to my peers.
You had a hard time selling that to your board, didn't you?
It's a little arm twisting, yeah. Yeah, because they want to lock you in, right? The downside is I get woefully underpaid. The upside is, at some point, there's going to be a blowback on CEO comp. And frankly, I don't want to be on the wrong side of that. I don't want to be on the cover of the Wall Street Journal and New York Times. I don't want to be on one of those lists of the top paid people in the world. The other upside is I think HubSpot's kind of a bit of a funky culture. It's an egalitarian culture. And I think it sends a really bad signal if your CEO is out there making 100 times what one of your support reps is making, when frankly, I couldn't do as good a job as one of my support reps supporting our customers. They're fantastic. And so I'm on sort of the right side of truth and justice there. I think over time there's got to be a blowback on this stuff because it's a runaway. But yeah, that's the background on it.
All right, let's open this up, and we need to keep 3 things in mind as we're asking our questions. Number 1, wait for the mic. Number 2, keep it short. Number 3, make it a question. Got it? We got 3? All right, who's gonna model that behavior with the first question?
Got the mic.
A.
My question is, how did being an entrepreneur impact your personal life at home, and how did you manage that?
Okay.
Can I just point out that was following all 3 guidelines perfectly? Thank you.
I'm a poor role model, frankly, on the personal life side. I'm still single. I'm 47.
That's not because you're an entrepreneur, though.
Probably right. Probably right. Probably right, as usual. I haven't sworn once in this thing, by the way.
I think you used a phrase that might not.
Okay.
Never mind. Answer the question.
This is not something I should be opining on. I don't have a very good work-life balance. I work a lot. I probably work 60 hours a week, and I have worked 60 hours a week for the last 10 years. It goes up to 80 once in a while. I haven't balanced it well. I love the good and bad part for me is I love what I do. I love my colleagues. I love my customers. I love my partners. I love the impact we're having on Boston. And it's incredibly motivating for me, and I pour a ton of time into it. And I want to build something really special that, that brings Boston back. That's a cornerstone company here. I want to hire a bunch of you guys and a bunch of my employees, and I want you guys to go and start other big companies. I want to be proud of that, and I want to live my life vicariously through all of them and through the success in Boston for another 50 years if I can live that long. But,
are you kind of the?
I don't have good advice on that.
Are you kind of the Jack Welch school of thought that work-life balance, at least for big chunks of a career, can be overrated and you really need to pour your heart into your work?
I didn't know Jack Welch said that.
He said something like that, I think.
I think I just did it. Frankly, I need to get more work-life balance. If I think I have a life list. And I encourage you all to have life lists and update it every couple of years. And there's things on my life list that, don't ask me about that, Andy, but there's things on my life list. And I've scratched a bunch of stuff off my life list, like taking company public, being a CEO, writing a best-selling book, stuff like that. I have some stuff on the personal side that's very much open. But I don't have good advice for you. My work-life balance is terrible.
Let me give you an idea how bad it is. He calls me up to hang out with him. We clearly need to fix this. You have a microphone?
Yes.
Yeah, go.
Samer from Saudi Arabia, Sloan Fellow. Question is around the sense of entitlement of the new hires. My experience, you talked about they're very ambitious, the young, and also demand trust. So how do you manage sense of entitlement? They come as well with sense of entitlement. That's my experience as well. How do you manage that to also keep that retainment there?
Yeah. I don't feel that much of a sense of entitlement. There's a little bit of it. What they really want is they want to learn new stuff and be constantly challenged. And that where we might get stuck is, I'll tell you a little tidbit about HubSpot. We have a support department where we answer the phone calls and emails from customers who have questions. And there's probably 75 people in that department. Many of them we hired from the Apple Store, actually. And they're terrific kids. And what we tend to do is we bring them in, that's their first job, we train them, they learn everything about the product and the customers, then we move them around to other departments. The fact that they see a path and that all their peers have moved to other departments, I think that calms them down to a certain extent and lowers the angst around that sense of entitlement. I think if they join a company and they're like, gosh, I'm going to be doing the same darn thing for 4 years, they get pretty antsy about that. And yeah, so I think I haven't seen that as much. I'm not as jaded on those guys, and I think it's because our system is set up such that way. We have a report that comes out in HubSpot that shows how many people per department, how's that growing, how are we doing versus our headcount goals and all that stuff. And then there's a sister report that's how many transfers have happened. And I want to see a lot of transfers, and I want to see them across departments to break down any siloing that might happen. And if that's low, I get a red flag. Or if there's one VP that's not letting people move back and forth, I get a red flag. I think that's very helpful in lowering their angst around that stuff. Yeah.
Have you developed decent radar during the recruiting process for identifying people who want your job in 3 months and don't want to work for it, or kind of sensing any entitlement and not taking that person into the company?
I'm not sure I have that radar, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi. My name is Abdullah, Sloan Fellow, United Arab Emirates. I had a question about in the early years and your relationship with the VCs and the angel investors. Can you talk a little bit about that and how the challenges with these investors, the good and the bad?
I had mostly but people always slam their VCs. I had a wonderful crew of VCs that were, gosh, awesome. I would not be sitting here unless I met just the right VCs. I'll give you a couple of tips on VCs. The Series A VC is the key one. You're basically married to that person. You're with him or her for I'm still with mine 7 years later. His name's Larry Bond. He's General Catalyst. And he's like my older brother. We have a really good relationship. But you're with them for the long haul. They have a lot of influence over your life. So that's a key relationship for you. And they own the biggest chunk of your company. Couple other thoughts on VCs are you need to make sure your incentives are aligned. VCs will do 1 or 2 investments a year. And the math only works for them. Like they'll have 8 deals. They're swinging for the fences on every deal. And so if you're thinking, hey, I might not want to swing for the fences or be conservative or not want to spend the money, or you want to play small ball, don't do it because you're going to get shot. They'll fire you over that. They want to swing very, very, very hard.
But you did too, right?
I did too. So my incentives were aligned. At the beginning, I wasn't sure, but then was like, well, it's about a year and a half into HubSpot. We're like, we got lightning in a bottle here. We can't mess around with small ball. We got to swing hard. That's when we flipped it and we said, let's do that. VCs will waste a lot of your time before the funding. So I'll tell you one thing that surprised me about a VC. I was an entrepreneur in residence at a venture firm. I was VP at a rocket ship startup, helped build $1 billion company. Dharmesh, my co-founder, had started a company, big exit. Like we were like on paper, kind of perfect, frankly. We had a hell of a time raising our Series A.
Why?
They're skeptical. They see a lot of deals and they're skeptical. And they're hard to convince. So let me tell you about raising our Series A. Okay, picture this. There's like a flaming hoop here. There's the first flaming hoop. And the first flaming hoop is my meeting. First of all, I got lucky with General Catalyst because my first meeting was with a partner. Don't waste your time with the chipmunks at the firm. Only meet with the partners.
Especially the douchey ones, evidently.
There's multiple levels of partners, too. There's the partner you meet. They all have the same title, but there's an alpha dog partner in there. And you got to figure who the alpha dog is. So I wasn't dealing with it. Now he's the alpha dog. He wasn't the alpha dog back then. But my guess is on this first, you get the flaming hoop here. I got a dog. So the first meeting, you get 50-50 chance of convincing Larry that you're not a schmuck. So you jump through that first flaming hoop. Okay. The second flaming hoop You hope you go pitch the whole firm now. But the second flaming hoop is he introduced me to a guy named Doug Levin, who started another company around here, and he wanted me to pitch Doug Levin on the idea as a potential customer. And so that's kind of flaming hoop number 2. 50-50 chance of convincing Doug. It's a good idea. Doug's a very skeptical guy as it is. Got through that one. Third flaming hoop was I had to pitch David Orfeo, which is another partner inside the firm. 50-50 chance of convincing him. He's a skeptical guy as well. He sees a lot of deals. How many flaming hoops do you think I had? 10. I had 10 individual meetings with 50-50 chance. So I'm not great at math, but 1 over 2 to the 10th power likelihood of getting through all the flaming hoops. Really harder than it looks. And so that would be another thing I would say. Just be very, very careful. Don't waste your time. Don't raise your Series A from a firm who only does late-stage investments. They'll meet with you because they want to learn. Don't raise a Series A from somebody who doesn't understand your domain because they'll never convince their partners that they'll never get it through their partnership. Don't raise your Series A from a second-tier VC because that's going to slow you down. You only want to go with the top-tier VCs. It's harder than it looks. I'll give you another tip. Let's just say, what was your name again? Abdullah. My name is John Doerr. Okay, this is my friend.
Ellen Powell.
No, not Ellen Powell. I'm John Doerr from Kleiner Perkins. My good friend Jim Getz from Sequoia, and you and I just had a good meeting. And what I'd like to do is Series A. Abdullah, what I'd like to do, I like you a lot. I like your idea. I want to introduce you to my friend Jim over at Sequoia. We like to syndicate deals together. Can I introduce you to him? Is that the right answer? That was the wrong answer. The reason you don't want that is because you jump through a bunch of my hoops, right? You're coming down my line. And then you get introduced to my friend over here. You got to go through all 10 of his hoops. Unlikely you're going to get through his 10 hoops. And then you'll knock a hoop over, and then he's going to tell me which hoop you dropped over. Oh. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is you don't really want 2 VCs on your board at the Series A. That's just a lot of VC. God invented Series Bs for a reason. Okay? So you push back on that. Syndication, the very fancy business school term, it's another word for price fixing. I mean, they basically collude to get the valuation down. So that would be my other tip on it. Be very careful on who you pick for your Series A.
Hi, Azaz, MBA 16. My question for you, we have a class on entrepreneurial strategy and the importance of having this tight strategy. Tells you what not to do and what to focus and prioritize. How much of your success at HubSpot do you attribute to having a really tight early entrepreneur strategy, and how much of it was just kind of what you figured out as you went along?
That's a very good question. We pivoted twice before we got to HubSpot, the actual idea. Very early on in HubSpot, we relied on the Blue Ocean model. We were big fans of Blue Ocean strategy. We still use the Blue Ocean model. Like our head of people ops uses the Blue Ocean model to figure out a Blue Ocean strategy for attracting and retaining talent. How do we have a very unique strategy there? So we were pretty tight on that, actually. We still are pretty tight on it. And then we manage ourselves there in an annual planning process we call an M-Spot process that keeps us very focused on our mission and our strategy and lays out the things we're going to do in the year, and then lays out all the things we decided we're not going to do in the year, which is the really hard part about strategy. And the stuff we're not going to do is a very long list. And once a year, we have a big argument about what's getting included and what's not. And if it's not on the to-do list, the M-Spot is a very powerful tool for example, one of the employees to point out to me, hey, that's a great idea, but that's on the omit list this year. It's a very good tool.
And you're actually pretty good at not doing
We're
stuff.
pretty good at it. We weren't always. It's one of the things we've gotten very good at recently, the last 3 years. And I think part of the reason for our success is really quite tight around that now. It's a little bit like Google's OKR process, but it's our own spin on it.
Where are we? Yeah, please.
You mentioned that VCs want you to swing hard. Can you elaborate a bit more? How can you, if you spend money too quickly or, you haven't reached that stage, how do you go about that?
Yeah. One more time on it?
Like you mentioned that VCs want you to swing hard when they give you money.
Yep.
You don't want to do small ball. What does that mean?
What does small ball look like? as
Sure.
opposed to
And so
swinging hard?
early days of HubSpot, we hadn't decided whether we're just going to stick with angels and keep small ball and pay ourselves a lot, frankly, with dividends or from profits in the company, or we're going to sell a lot of equity and swing a lot harder. And if you go to a VC, for example, and say, yeah, we're at 100,000 in revenue and we're growing at 50% year over year, and we think we can be profitable by the end of the next year, that is just like a big, giant red flag. They have no interest in that. If you go to a VC and say, at 100,000 in revenue, and we're growing at 700% year over year, and we're going to lose this much money, and we'll make money down the road, and we want to take it public, that's music to their ears, because they can only sit on so many boards. It's very time consuming. They do 7 or 8 boards, and then they're done. They do 1 or 2 deals a year, and they're kind of done. So they'll see 100-200 deals a year, and they pick the one that they can convince their partners of and they think is a real winner. Their math just does not work unless it's a big outcome. And so I'd take General Catalyst has done very well. These are rough numbers. They probably put in 20,000 in HubSpot, and they'll take out 300 million. And they have a few of those. They had Kayak. They've got a few coming down the line. They're doing great. It's a newish firm, and they're killing it.
Wow.
But they got a whole bunch that they put 20 million in and they got out. And that's how they think. They swing for the fence. They're like David Ortiz. They're swinging for a home run every time. There's no one out there that's like Dustin Pedroia trying to hit doubles.
Where are we? Okay. No pressure, but you're asking the last question, so it has to be fantastic.
All right, giving it a shot. My name is Lillian, a first-year MBA student. I'd like to ask what you view as HubSpot's key core competencies, whether it's talent, technology, innovation, or customer service. And then I'd like to ask which of those core competencies that you feel is hardest to build and maintain.
Whew, that was, she stepped up. That was pretty good.
Big time.
That was
Big
pretty
time.
good.
I chose well.
Okay, I'll tell you something I learned about building companies. You need to be good at everything. You can't be really good at one thing and really bad at another thing. I'll give you an example. So let's just say there's a big traffic accident here in outside the Royal Sonesta. If there's a traffic accident here and it's backed, all of goddamn Cambridge gets backed up. And it's a little bit like that inside of a company. So our product in the early days wasn't great. And when your product's not great, gosh, the support guys get whaled. And when the support guys get whaled, the customer's getting happy. And then you can't sell anymore, and the word of mouth breaks down. Like, everything's completely linked. And so at different times, we've had strengths and weaknesses. Now, we're kind of a product company. We're much more of a West Coast-style company, and product's a real strength for us, but we're relatively balanced across all departments. And when we get a little bit out of balance, the whole thing starts to crumble. Because it's a big system dynamics model. Everything's sort of tied in together. It's like the beer game. You guys still play the beer game? Love the beer game. We talk about the beer game at HubSpot like once a week. And so they're all pretty good. I would say the thing we do that's pretty unique, that's hard to build, and is ironically very defensible and very, very soft but defensible, is culture. We've got a very unique culture. And I think if you want to build a company that attracts lots of great customers, you've built a unique product that's very strong, and it's like a magnet that pulls in customers. But at the end of the day, HubSpot's all people, all the values in the people. And so if you want to build a great culture and pull in the best people and retain them, you have to have a unique, differentiated culture that's very strong. And I think we've done that particularly well. My co-founders really spirited it. That's hard to defend, hard to replicate. That's one unique thing we've done that's really paid off. We didn't start working on that for a couple of years in, but that's been huge.
I think that's a great note to end on. Brian, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Thank you all.